Does that work, Michael?
Yes, sir. I think yep. I'm in the middle of setting up the live stream now.
All right, that's good. So probably just one more minute and then we'll start. Then the people will just keep joining. If they want, I have not started the recording right here as well. Probably we can start from the show.
Okay. Have you started the recording?
No.
No.
Shall I do that right now?
And yeah, we can do it in a minute. Okay, so we're live streaming now. Good.
So I'll check the YouTube as well. I'll keep monitoring that for any questions or stuff if you have them.
Yeah, I'll try to keep an eye on that since you're gonna basically be the lead here. I'll just be checking that. And here's the YouTube live link, and we are live. Okay. All right. Whenever you're ready, I'll be back in just a second.
Okay. All right. So without any further delay, we'll just go ahead and get started. So I can already see a few members right here. Some of the members might catch up on YouTube. So please feel free to write whatever you want, to ask whatever you want, any comments, any questions during the session. So most of them will be answering towards the end, but if we feel like there is something we do need to answer right now, so we'll go ahead and do that. So right here in the session, for those of you who don't know, we have one of my coaching clients, Chelsea, and she is an older client of mine now. I started working with her around 2 years back. We started working in September 2022. It's September 2024 right now, and it probably has been more than around 1.5 years since we finished working together. So she's here. I'll first let her introduce herself, and then we'll go ahead and ask her questions. And obviously, you people are here. You can ask her whatever you want, us with whatever you want while we are doing the session. So, Chelsea, I would just like for you to introduce yourself a bit, where you're from, what do you do, and then we'll go ahead and begin the proceedings.
Sure. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you once again for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea Nzenwa. I live in Delta State, Nigeria, and I work in marketing as a marketing professional. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Good. Wonderful. So, like many of the people would have seen in your emails and in the description for this session, we have some specific things to ask her, just like we did with Joe, one of Michael's clients last Wednesday. So the questions are going to be more or less the same, but obviously they are going to be a bit different based on her specific speech, how her speech was, how did she
when you feel like the data integrity isn't necessarily even the best, or you know that you're gonna have to update it, right?
So yeah. So this is what we are going to be focusing on. So I have a list right here, which I'll go ahead and keep asking you, and probably you have that too. So we'll go ahead and answer, not necessarily in order, one by one, but we'll keep up with the questions. So first of all, the people want to know, of course, the people who are watching you right now might see that, hey, I don't think you had a struggle with your speech in the past, or this or that, or whatever it is. So I would like for you to go ahead and start with explaining exactly what was your speech and life like before you started the Pro90D speech system.
Sure. Thank you for that, Farrukh. So with regards to my speech journey, right, for as long as I can remember growing up, I have struggled with my speech. So ever since I just became conscious of what it meant to struggle with your speech, I just knew that I wasn't as fluent, when speaking. Please let me know if you can hear me clearly. Can you hear me? Okay. I just knew that I wasn't as fluent as, people around me. It was just something I became conscious of growing up. And, through childhood, through school, I just would have to deal with, situations where I wasn't fluent. In certain instances, for example, when I was talking to my family members, friends that I was more comfortable with, I was more fluent. It wasn't as bad in those circumstances. But I think just knowing that that was something I struggled with, just and feeling very conscious about that started making me feel very nervous and really affected me, particularly in high pressure speaking situations. So take, for example, through school, whenever I had to give a presentation, I would do everything in my power to avoid that, right? And, I would just shy away from anything that had to do with like presentations, speaking. So, but when I was speaking with like family members or people I was comfortable with, I would say that my fluency was at about 70%-ish, like 70%. But then situations where, with strangers or giving a presentation, it will go all the way down, let's say like 40% or so. I would be very nervous. I would, block certain words. I would negatively anticipate, and all the stuff that comes with struggling with one speech. So yeah, that's a bit of how my speech life looked like before I joined the program.
All right, makes sense. So, how was all of that having an impact on your life? Like, how was your speech? You explained that part. Now, how you speaking like that was impacting your life, your speaking opportunities, your opportunities at work, and many different areas of your life. So, if you could just give us a brief explanation of that.
Yeah, so certainly had a profound impact because speaking or speech is a very major part of one's life. I feel like people judge you a lot. It's huge part of people's first impression of you. So in my case, I would try to avoid, speaking situations, anything that would bring me out there. So even let's say even when going for or when presented with certain opportunities, I would evaluate my accepting or declining that opportunity based on how much speaking was involved. And if it had to do with a lot of speaking, certainly I would decline. Even going through school, positions that I could have been offered. So an example is, during high school, when you're at topmost level, like the senior level, they assign positions, head girl, senior prefect, this and that. I was actually supposed to be like the head girl of my set, but just because of the fact that that position required speaking at our graduation, I declined that. I passed that on to someone else and opted for a lower role. So I think this just gives an example of how like the impact it had throughout, and just me avoiding any situation that would entail a lot of speaking and just going for more background roles and just things that won't put me out there.
Sounds good. Thank you for explaining that. Michael, do you have something to add right here before we keep moving on with the questions? You're on mute.
No, not yet, but I'll have something to add a little later. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. No worries. All right, Chelsea. So one thing that I would really like to ask you right here, many of the people who are working on their speech, whether they are working with the self-study course, whether they are working with Michael, with myself, many of the people who are working or who have not yet started working, most of the times they are not sure. And Michael and myself, we have heard this question a lot, that how long will it take for my new speaking style to become automatic? All right, I'm working on my speech. Do I need to keep working on my speech for my whole life and keep focusing on slowing down, extending, blending, modeling, inflecting? Or will there be a time where it would start to happen on its own and I would start enjoying speaking situations? So, in your case, how much time do you think it took for you to make your new speaking style automatic?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in my case, right, I would say that, so even before I started the coaching, just watching the free content, watching Michael's videos on YouTube, I could already see just, instant improvements, but they were short-lived, right? And so that was one of the reasons why I actually even opted for the coaching. But then when I started working with you, Farrukh, initially, I could almost immediately see progress, but then it would be like some good days, bad days. It would be hard for me to pinpoint exactly how long it took because I would say for me, just looking back, I just realized that, wow, my speech struggles have become fewer and farther apart. But if I were to give an estimate of how long it took, I would say the time where like I started really feeling like, this is really becoming fewer and farther apart. I'll say around the 5th month or so, right? Where I started seeing longer periods of successes and just going on long stretches where I would just go into a speaking situation without worrying, without any, and just find out, wow, I can actually do this. And I've actually been doing this for a while now. Yeah, so for me, that's how long I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So that is a great point you made. Now, as Michael explains in almost every session, that when you start working on your speech, you would start to see improvements and results from the first day. So whenever we mention a number like 90 days or 3 months or whatever it is, it does not mean that it would take you 3 months to start seeing progress in your speech. It means that during that time, like 3, 4 months or so, you would start to feel that the new speaking style is becoming automatic and you have to do less and less to activate it, to use it. And for the most part, it's starting to happen on its own. So you would start to encounter speaking situations where someone would just ask you something, you would start to give your answer, and you would realize, wow, without even trying to slow down, without even trying to do this, I'm still speaking in my new speaking style. So that is the time where you feel like, all right, it has started to become automatic. So that those numbers are for automaticity. So once you keep doing the work consistently, like Chelsea said, you would experience highs, you would experience lows. That's a normal part of the process, not only in working on your speech, in whatever you're working on, it would be a combination of highs and lows, but you would still keep moving upwards as long as you do consistent amount of work. And that is what our job is as a coach, Michael or myself, to let the people know that it's a normal part of the process, because some people feel like, oh, I just experienced a bump, I just got stuck. Maybe it's not working for me. It's not made for me. Probably it might work for the rest of the people. But we make you realize that it's a very normal part of the process. You're just experiencing a normal process. And that is what it goes like. So a great point mentioned by you. And then it starts to become automatic and you feel like, oh, it's happening on its own now. Like Michael or myself or Chelsea or the people, we Right now, we are not focusing on slow down, extend, inflect, blend. It starts to happen on its own. So that is a very good part. All right. So when we mention about doing the work every single day until reaching to a point where you start to see automaticity in your speech, so some people might ask that what's the work that you have to do every day? So I need to do this by myself with people. So what are the exercises, activities by yourself and with people that you did to keep moving towards automatics?
Yeah, so there were a number of them. First of all, for me, a key part was the daily affirmations. They were an inseparable part of my mornings. I mean, so on some days I would be able to listen to them in the mornings and in the evenings, just at night before I go to bed. But on other days, I would just be able to listen in the mornings. But as much as possible, I tried my best to make sure that I was listening to them every day. This is alongside the videos as well. So just so sometimes I didn't really follow a particular order. I tried to follow the course, but after I had gone through all the videos, I would then replay like anyone that I just felt I wanted to listen to at that time. Also, daily practices for me was important, and because of also the nature of my job, so I work remotely, so I attend a lot of meetings on Teams, on Zoom. So what I would do is I would go on Google Meet, for example. I would create a meeting, and it would just be me in the meeting room, and then I would practice. This helped because it was a video meeting, so I could practice things like, like my hand gestures, my facial expressions, and like my new speaking style and all of that. So I would do this a number of times every week. And I would also, I think also practicing with my family as well, using my new speaking style with them. Although it was really hard because initially I was very conscious about speaking differently with my family, but I mean they were aware of the journey I was on, so I let them know, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, and so they were very supportive of that. So with them, I would just practice like speaking with my new speaking style every time that I had to speak with them, and also just trying to build that momentum in low pressure or low pressure speaking situations before translating it into higher pressure situations. So yeah, just those really like practicing daily, watching, listening to the videos, the what's it called, the affirmations as well, listening to those, and the exercises too helps, like the 777. I wouldn't say I did that daily. I didn't do it daily, but I think just whenever I was practicing speaking in general, like with the Google Meets, I would practice modeling. So I would practice my new speaking style, and that would include things like slowing down, hand gestures, facial expressions, and all of that. So I feel like I was able to incorporate all of those elements in my practice time as well. So yeah.
Wonderful. Great answer. So some very important points that Chelsea mentioned right here, that obviously working on your speech is just like learning a new language. So you just can't keep learning by your own, but eventually you have to get out there and you have to speak and you have to use it. So it's like practicing by yourself first. Let it be the audio listening, obviously, listen to audios, 777 modeling practices that we are going to speak about in a bit, free flow speaking practices. So you keep doing all the work by yourself, but then you eventually have to get out there and speak in situations. Now, many times we have heard people say that whenever I'm in a high pressure speaking situation, it all goes out of the window. I can't slow down, I can't model, I can't do whatever I want. So, what you have to do is that you have to keep graduating upwards. You start by practicing on by yourself using your new speaking style, doing the modeling, free flow speaking, all the practices inside the course. Then you use it in low pressure. Low pressure, speaking to your family, speaking to your friends. Then you graduate up to medium pressure. That might be speaking in a supermarket or speaking with someone that you don't know. And then you go to high pressure, which might be speaking to your boss, speaking up in a meeting, giving a presentation or something. So if you don't use it in low and medium pressure, it will go out of the window in high pressure. So for it to not go out of the window, you have to keep doing the work in every situation. Like Michael says, every time you open your mouth to speak, it's a practice opportunity for you. People feel like with family, they know how I speak, they are used to that. I'm used to speaking in that way with them. So let's just leave it. And then let's try to use it in high pressure only. And then they say it goes out of the window. So it will go out of the window because you're not making yourself habitual. It has to be every single time. That's human nature. Sometimes, of course, you would forget to use it, but the moment you catch yourself, just bring your focus back to the new speaking style. Then it might go back again. Then you bring it back. Then it might go again. Then you bring it back. So you keep doing this. You consciously keep focusing on it until it starts to reach automaticity. So this is a very important point that you mentioned, Jesse. Michael, something to add here?
Yeah, that's very, very important. And I think we're going to get to this question, but I'm just going to jump to it now. And if we want to go over it later. So, Chelsea, how long has it been since you coached with Farrukh?
It's been, I think, around 2 years now. Yeah, 2 years.
Okay. So a lot of people wonder, does this have longevity? Does this last? Or is it something that just works for, the first 90 days or while you're in coaching? Because people want stuff that is going to last. So maybe if you could say a little bit about how this has been working for you over the last 2 years. And then we've also seen you in the Virtual Speech Masters Club, which we're going to add a link for that. And we've just seen you grow even more from there. But the question is, does it last? Like, does it stick?
So, in my experience, I would say it actually gets better as the years go by, as long as you continue putting your new skills to use, right? As long as you make sure you don't revert to like your old, consciously and constantly, putting your new skills to use. So for me, it's easier for me to speak, in any kind of situation, be it presentations, in meetings this year than even last year. So as the years keep going by, like it's continuing to be easier and easier and easier for me as I continue to, just because for me now, I don't even think about it. For me, this is how I speak now. So that's just, I take it as that's just how I speak now. And as I continue to do that, I'm also building more confidence because now I just hardly have to think about my speech. It's just something that I know it's no longer a problem for me as much as it was, when I started. So certainly it gets easier as the years go by, as long as you continue to just, you put in the work. I would say that the beginning is the hardest, right? When you start, it's the hardest, but as the years go by, it just sort of becomes a part of you and it gets easier from there.
So you made a really good point. it's really a matter of putting into practice your new speaking style every time you speak,
Mm-hmm.
forever, basically, right? You just keep using it.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, what some people do is they just only try to use it in high pressure speaking situations. And so that then, and then in every other situation, they revert back. So obviously, as the months and years go by, they're struggling, right? And so stuff goes out the window, then they get discouraged and they start reverting back. But if you use it all the time, every day, every week, every month, every year, just like you said, it becomes the way you speak. Like, this is just the way I speak. And
Exactly.
that's what we want people to know, is this, it's a skill and it's a
Mm-hmm.
habit. And if you just use it all the time, and then if you go out and you try to use it more, which is another question I have for you, which you kind of answered, but I want you to say a little bit more about it. So you said as you started speaking and you started to see yourself speaking well, you built
Mm-hmm.
confidence, because I've heard
Mm-hmm.
this a lot. And then you wanted to speak more, right? And so you started
Mm-hmm.
accepting and taking advantage of more speaking opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to hear is how much, like, did you go out and start creating and taking advantage of more speaking opportunities? What did that look like during your progression?
So, an interesting question because so my job, working in marketing, it already puts me in a position where I have to give presentations. And then the fact that I also work remotely as well was a factor. But the big difference was in the past, before I started Pro90D, there were in cases where I could avoid, I would do everything in my power to avoid them. But in cases where I had no choice but to do it, it will be accompanied with anxiety. Like, I would lose sleep literally nights before the event. I would just be dreading it. I'll be so anxious. I wouldn't eat. Like, it had a lot of psychological and like emotional effects on me, and it was just a lot of pressure. But with the program, I could still, just take those meetings, handle those. I would actually put myself forward for presentations at work. I would lead meetings without even giving it a second thought, right? Whereas in the past, just looking at my schedule, scanning ahead, like my calendar for the week and seeing some meetings, the anxiety, I would already be very anxious. But now I don't even look at the calendar. It's like any meeting is fine. Like, it has just become a part of me, and I don't think too much about it. And so that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want you guys to hear that. She says, any meeting is fine. So now she's not staying up late, worrying for days and hours about speaking in meetings and doing presentations. And it's been 2 years. And here's a question that's going to come up later on, but I'll just ask it now, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Farrukh. So as a founder, I was actually cracking up because Farrukh and I talked about this yesterday. So you chose purposely to work with Farrukh and not me. And I think there were two key reasons for that. One had to do with pricing, but then there's another reason that you chose to work with Farrukh. So tell us a little bit about why you chose to work with Farrukh and not me.
Yes. So for me, the reason was because I was interested in working with Farrukh because he's someone who has been through the program. So I felt like working with someone who was once in the shoe that I was as a student and, not as the founder, he would relate even more so to my experiences, and just seeing that he was able to go through the program and then seeing the impact and just the transformation that he experienced, it just, was like a closer, it felt within my reach, if I should put it that way. So it felt more within my reach, and just felt like he would just closely relate to my experiences. And yeah, that was my reason for working with him.
And then there's a second reason, which had to do with pricing, right?
Yeah.
So, so say just a little bit about that. What?
Yes.
Like what? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So the pricing as well, right? During the time that I worked with him, I think there was actually like a discount. So it was $997, if I remember correctly. And for me at the time, I wasn't really working for that long. So I viewed it as an investment. It was actually something I had to pay for like over some months, because I had to save for it. So my cousin who lives in the US paid for me upfront, but I had to reimburse, like I had to, so I actually had to plan for that, because I knew that I had to pay back, and I had to pay her back over a period of time. But for me, I just felt like this is really important. This is something worth investing in, because, like I said, one speech is, I would say, like, it's one of the most important things. It's one of the first impressions that people have of you. So no matter how good you are, or no matter like what you have to offer, if you're not able to sell that well, if people are not able to get that from you, and if just one powerful tool to express that is your speech, of course. So if they're not able to get that from you, they just assume that, it's not. So for me, it was an investment, because I felt like if I worked on my speech and I was able to overcome the challenges that I was dealing with that, I would be able to even make a whole lot more from that. And yeah, so I went that extra mile and extra length to be able to afford it.
So we want people who are viewing, it doesn't matter what country you live in or where you are, if you see your speech as being important enough, and you look at this like an investment, and I'm sure that you obviously have earned the money back because you had to pay it back. So you couldn't have paid it back unless you earned it. And now you're earning more and more. But I mean, I've had people in Africa literally save for years to work with me. And you were blessed enough to have someone to pay for you up front, right? And then you paid them back. So when someone says, I mean, obviously there are some people just don't have the money, they don't have access, they can't do it. But I would say that there are a lot of people, especially in places like the US, Canada, and Europe and places, and even in Africa, that do have the money or have access or can get it if they really want to, right? Just like you did. And that once you do that, it can transform and change your entire life, your personal life, your professional life. And it's an investment where you literally get the money back often within a short period of time, right? And then you position yourself to continue to earn more and more money throughout your lifetime because of your speech. So we're really, really proud of you that you took that step, and we're actually seeing you grow. As you said, you just keep getting better and better as you attend our virtual speech masters club. You're just getting better and better and better every week, literally.
Thank you.
Okay, Farrukh, what's next? What's our next question?
Exactly. Some wonderful points mentioned by you, Chelsea, overall. So yeah, I also had to work on something, like after I worked on my speech, there was something else that I struggled with as well. I shared it with Michael. And even at that time, I also did not have the funds and I had to pay something like 1600 USD or something. The same was the case for me. I had someone in the US who paid, and then as I kept earning, I paid back to him. So the point that Michael and Chelsea, and of course me, we are trying to make right here is that if you really want to do something, you will. Like people, Michael, as he said, people have saved for years. So if this is really something that you're into, that you're willing to do, you will find a way to do that. All right, good. So moving on towards the next thing, like we talked about you working on your speech in reaching automaticity. So a very important part in this is changing your mindset, changing your speaking identity. So I would like for you to explain a bit about that, that how were you able to transform your mindset, your speaking identity as a whole,
Mhm.
as you kept moving forward? Because there are various systems out there which are just focusing on the physical aspect of it. That just do this, extend every word or speak really slow, drag your speech. They are often focusing on that. So how important is mindset, speaking identity? How did you work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that we really can't overemphasize the importance of having a new speaking identity. And this is where modeling plays a very crucial role. So for me, when I'm speaking or when I was, when I was creating that new speaking identity, even though it was hard to actually be consistent with it initially at the beginning, especially, like in high pressure situations at work, you feel, oh, people judge me for sounding differently and all of that. But as I got used to it and I just pushed myself to continue, I just can't stress enough like how important it is for your new speaking style to be different and distinct from how you used to speak before, because your brain has already associated that your old speaking style with stuttering. And so if you want, one thing that I've even noticed personally is whenever I'm in a dip, right? Whenever I'm in a dip or I find that I'm struggling, one thing I realized was that that was actually my old speaking style. Like I was slipping, from the new modeling and like the new. So it's very important that the way you speak, like you have a different, you should actually be able to distinguish in your brain, okay, this is your old style, this is the new one. It has to be distinct. And so for me, uh, it just, that played a very huge part, and just modeling helped me create my new speaking style. And I think one key thing for me with modeling initially was I had initially thought that modeling meant speaking like Michael. And for me, it was a struggle. First of all, being female. Second of all, my accent, being African and all. So, but you told me during our coaching, Farrukh, that all that I needed to do was to feel different. Like I just needed to be speaking in a different way or just have something that triggers my new speaking style, whether it's hand gestures or extending. And so I really got to understand what modeling entailed. And that just helped me like really comfortable with that and helped me create and just shape like the new way that I speak.
Farrukh, can I jump in a little bit? Because I had a great conversation with a lady yesterday. Now, she's a white lady, right? So she obviously she's a lady, she's a woman. She speaks differently, she has a different accent than I do. And she said something uh, that I understood the psychology behind it, but it was kind of surprising. And so it shows you the range of how modeling can work. So modeling can simply be, you can model yourself, you can model your best self. If you speak well, you can just think about, man, let me speak the way I spoke when I spoke that time, when I spoke really well, which is obviously what we want you to start doing anyway. It's not about modeling me or someone else. But what she said that she does in her practices that was really quite funny, because she sent me a video and she said, "Hi, this is Michael Williams and welcome back to Seven Steps." So, and I said, okay, make sure you use your name, just because sometimes people need to use their own name. Now, she's someone who doesn't stutter, but still has some challenges when she's speaking under pressure, speaking too fast, cloudy mind, just, and then probably stumbling over her words and so forth. So we also work with people who just struggle with their speech and not stutter, as well as people who stutter even severely. But what she said she does is when she used my name, it actually helped her feel more different. Like by just saying, "Hi, I'm Michael Williams." I was like, wow. And I understood why, but I always tell people, no, use your own name. And so now, and this is one of the things that makes this process so effective, is that we build into it feedback. When someone says something that works and there's science behind it, we build it into the program. So the program just keeps getting better and better. And again, there's a lot of science behind what she said, that when she would use her name, it's like, okay, it works a little bit. But when she says, "Hi, I'm Michael Williams," she said, bam, she immediately felt different. And it helped her speak differently, and it triggered modeling. So I just wanted to throw that in so that people could see that there's a lot of flexibility. Sometimes it's just a matter of, like Farrukh said, like some people just might struggle trying to feel like the model. And it could just be, you just need to feel different than you usually feel, right? And that will work for you. Sometimes you can model your best self, and that will work. And then other times you can just go full in the modeling and kind of try to become the other person. Now, some people might say, well, I don't want to lose my own identity. You don't. You actually just become a better you. So when people see you and hear you, they're not thinking, oh, you're pretending or you're acting like somebody else or who is this? They're just seeing a better you. So you don't lose yourself. You just become a better you. So I wanted to throw that in, just to share that. Yeah. All right, Farrukh.
Yeah, so absolutely. Speaking about modeling, when I was working on my speech, I also modeled mine. It does not mean that right now I speak like Michael. There might be some similarity, might be, but I have my own speaking style. So when you're modeling someone, the end goal is not to speak like someone. You're just using someone else's speaking identity to make your progress fast towards smooth speech. So modeling acts as a bridge. It's not necessarily quite easy at the start, but it makes the whole process quite easier and quite faster. Because when you're like, I'm not myself right now, I'm Michael right. It just changes how you feel right in the moment when you get into your model's shoes. I modeled Michael even for my own language. I know that Michael does not speak that language, but I just used to visualize and think that, oh, if Michael were to speak this language, how would he do that? And whenever I would practice modeling, I would do that in English as well and in my own language as well. Some people also ask this, that when you're modeling, is it necessary to do the modeling, free flow speaking in every practices in your own language as well, if you're bilingual or you speak more languages? So even if you do the work just in English, it does start to spill over in your other languages as well, because the speaking style remains the same, whatever language you're speaking. But if you do the practices in your own language as well, it makes the process quite faster. I was speaking my own language, Urdu or Hindi, as you might call, for like 90 to 95% of my day. So I wanted to include the practices right there. It does not matter whether you're a female trying to model a male. It does not matter if you have a different accent. It does not matter if you're modeling in a different language, whatever you're doing, you can model. And it would just help you reach to where you want quite faster and quite easy. So that consistent observation of your model, consistent practice by yourself, and then constantly going out there and getting into the shoes of your model. Consistently practicing that, like Chelsea said. And within some time, you start to build up your own speaking identity. So a very, very good point about modeling right here. Very good, Chelsea. So moving forward, and I remember you were there in one of my webinars back then. And after I finished off with the webinar, you just unmuted yourself, like here on Zoom, and you asked me that what is the process of coaching and how I can work with you, something like that, right? So the thing that I would like for you to explain is that why did you choose coaching over self-study? So you could also have gone with your own doing the self-study course, but what advantages did you see in coaching that you opted for that, even though you knew that you don't have the funds for that, and you would have to ask someone else to pay it for the short term?
Mhm. So for me, it was two main things, right? So first of all, the progress that I had already experienced from just watching the free content convinced me that it was worth making the investment in the coaching. And I just felt like I would get the most out of the program by having someone who, first of all, could hold me accountable to make sure that I was on track, even though just even from my perspective, like the sacrifice that I had to make to be able to pay for the program was a big motivation in itself, but I also knew that the process was not going to be easy. It was going to be difficult. And so just having someone who I felt could just make sure that I was on the right track was important to me. And secondly, also just being able to receive personalized feedback, right? So knowing that, so from the content itself, like the free material that Michael put out, I already knew that I knew the main focus of the program was centered on modeling, but I also knew that there were other aspects. So there were just, different good pieces here and there, slowing down, breathing. So I just knew that I wanted someone who could also provide like structure and just help me focus on one particular goal at a time, and just also give me like personalized feedback that applied to my speech, because just someone objective as well, just someone objective, because I may not be able to objectively pinpoint where I needed to work on and where I needed to improve. So for me, a coach was going to deliver those benefits, and that was why I opted for the coaching instead of the self-study.
Wonderful. Sounds good. All right. So a very interesting point, like we always mention, that when you're working with the coach, it makes the process faster because of some of the reasons that we discussed. The first that I discussed at the start is that sometimes in the process, when naturally you experience tips and failures, if someone is by themselves, they might feel like it's not working for me. I have slipped back and stuff. So a coach is there to keep you more encouraged. A coach is there to keep you more accountable, because you know at the back of your mind that, hey, I have to meet with Michael, or hey, I have to meet with Farrukh the next week, so I have to work on my speech. So even if you don't want to, it makes you work on your speech, because you know that a coach would be there to look at your speech then. Then you get that feedback. I was having a call with Chelsea one day back, and we were also discussing about the fact that sometimes how people feel like inside the self-study course, there's a lot. So there's modeling, free flow speaking, there's extending, blending, finishing, articulating, inflecting, using your hands, a whole lot of stuff. So what do I need out of it? What is the most important thing for me right now? So obviously working as a coach, Michael has been doing it for like more than 12 years. I have been doing it for 2.5 years. So when you work on your speech by yourself and when you work with various people, we know exactly what you need to focus on. All right, that's good now. Let's focus on this. That's good now. Let's focus on this. So that makes the whole process quite faster and easier. So more accountability, encouragement, feedback, and yeah. So Chelsea, like I was discussing about, there can be various things sometimes, and the people just don't know what is the most important thing for me right now. So what was the most important thing for you when you were working on your speech? Or what were some of the most important things for you?
So for me, one thing that made a big difference for me was, and I think I feel like we haven't even spoken about it a lot in this session, but it's very profound and very important, is self-talk. Because when I think the first time that I actually was intentional about putting it into practice, I think in the audio, Michael made a point about how you need to remind yourself, like you need to, just replacing negative thoughts in your head once is not enough. You need to constantly do it. Like, so the first time that I was intentional about putting that to practice, I remember that day I had a presentation and I just made up my mind that for this presentation, I'm going to put self-talk into practice. And, you know, and it was something I literally needed. I did it, I had to do it over like 200 times. I lost count of how many times I consciously had to tell myself you are an excellent speaker. Whenever I started to feel a little bit nervous, or I just started to drift, my mind started to drift into that negative space, I consciously, and that made such a huge difference because
Wow.
one thing that I realized was, even starting the program, I could see the impact that using my new speaking style was having in conversations. When I'm comfortable, I can speak well. I can speak very, very well. But in those high pressure situations, like it was still a struggle, especially at the beginning. And so I was able to identify that the big difference there is nervousness. And the nervousness comes from all the negative, just feeling all those negative feelings leading up to that meeting. So, or, that session. So the self-talk made me feel a whole lot relaxed. I was able to start entering into those high pressure situations with a more positive and just not feeling as nervous as I used to feel. And that just helped me to start even putting my new speaking style into use in those high pressure situations. So for me, I would say like self-talk really played a crucial role in helping me be able to actually put my new speaking style to use in high pressure situations, because it just made me feel a lot more relaxed and just positive going into those type of situations.
Let me jump in here and just make a comment. Yes, you're right, because we often say in our orientation that self-talk is one of the most, it's almost the most, but I don't want to say it's the most, but it might be the most, but it's definitely amongst the top two most important factors that can determine your success. Like I literally say, without self-talk, the program probably won't work. You can get some benefits from listening and practicing, but unless you're able to continuously talk to yourself throughout the day, and I like what you said, while you were in the meeting, and you said like 200 times. So that means a lot. And here's what people don't realize: you can't just do it before the meeting. okay, I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. You can pump yourself up. And in the meeting, goes out the window, right? And you might even start off well. And it could even be halfway through the meeting. And then bam, it goes out the window. You had to do it throughout the entire meeting, constantly self-talking, reminding yourself, until now you don't have to do that, but very rarely if you do, right?
Yeah.
And so self-talk, which is why we do cover this, while we haven't talked about it a lot here, it's a big part of the program. You have to be able to talk to yourself before, during, and even after, because a lot of times people will ruminate. They'll talk to themselves negatively after the meeting. Oh God, I screwed up again. And this, so they're literally reliving it, imprinting that negative experience, right? Reliving it. So you got to talk to yourself positively before and during. That's the key. During, which is what you did. And if you don't do that, you're literally dead in the water. Like it's just not going to work.
Exactly.
Right? Because
yeah,
like, have you ever experienced not self-talking and you get, and maybe you even pumped yourself up before the meeting, and you got in a meeting and within seconds or minutes, you just forgot everything that you had talked about. Like, has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, yes. It's used to have happened to me, and that was why I decided I was going to put this into practice. I just took the part where you said you have to constantly remind yourself, and I just made up my mind. You constantly, no matter how many times you have to, as many times as the negative thoughts come, you have to bounce it back. And so
Wow.
I just constantly was very intentional about doing that. And after I did it the first time, when I was successfully able to execute it the first time, and I saw the impact, the huge difference it had, right? The way I was able to go into a speaking situation more relaxed and confident and go through that session still feeling that way, I just knew that I had to continue. And yes, now I no longer have to do it as much, right? I mean, I would tell myself, oh, you're an amazing speaker, but I don't have to do that before I go into like a meeting or something, because now it's part of me. But at that time, when I was still working, it was very, very important for me to do it.
So here's the thing that some people think. When I'm speaking, like I'm speaking right now, people think I can't remind myself, I don't have the mental capacity to remind myself of whatever, to slow down, or that I'm a great speaker, or whatever it is that you need to remind yourself. You think, I can't do it because I'm thinking about what I have to say. Not true. Like, it's literally not true. You do have the mental capacity to, while you're speaking, as well as when you pause, which is the importance of pausing and slowing down. When you slow your speech down and you pause, it's called, it's like that mental space that you get that allows you to very, very quickly, in a second, sometimes even less than a second, quickly remind yourself of something. Like, you're an excellent speaker. Just relax. You're okay. You can do this. You're a great speaker. And you can do that literally throughout your entire conversation. So you do, doesn't matter who you are, because this, I've studied this. You do have the capacity to do that while you're speaking. And you just said that you did it throughout the entire conversation. It could be in an important meeting where the pressure's on, or it could be in a low pressure meeting. You have the, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just to add to that, right? I'll say one key thing that also helps is making sure that you're actually doing the practice. Because when you're practicing, your speech is front of mind, like it's top of mind for you. It's easier to remind yourself when it's already like a part of your life in low pressure speaking situations. So if you're not doing like the work on a regular and you want to just remind yourself in that hyper, you won't be able to achieve. But if it's something you're actively working on, it becomes just top of mind for you. Like it's something you're conscious about. You go into every situation thinking about your speech. And so it's easy to catch when you are off track. And it's also very possible, even if, let's say, you get started and you realize that you're not using your new speaking style, you can correct that even in that same conversation. You can change it. You can start to use your new speaking style, like even then. And I think one other thing that helped me too was post-it notes, right? Post-it notes like this. So because of the fact that I work remotely, so I attend a lot of meetings and all, I'll literally write slow down, breathe, like, and paste it on my laptop, like, where so it's like throughout my day as I'm working, whenever I look at my laptop screen, or like it's just a constant reminder there, slow down, breathe, pause, like, so I just had that. So that's just like a little personal tip that, reminder that to me also.
No, and we're actually, I'm actually updating our daily routine. I've been updating it over the last, excuse me, month. And one of the things that we're going to start including is something called visual and auditory reminders, right? So, and you just said it, post-it notes. Put a post-it note on your screen. Some people are more visual, some people are more auditory. So you could have something that a ding or some kind of notification on your phone that pops up and says, you can record, use your own voice and says, remember to slow down, like every hour, or every 30 minutes or 15 minutes, post-it notes, whatever. All those things, as you're saying, it absolutely works. And then you said something else that was really, really profound about, top of mind and doing the work. So you have to do the work. You have to do the work. And what we recommend is doing the work, especially during transition times, when you're driving, when you're working out, when you're cleaning the house. Sometimes you can do it while you work. You can have stuff going on in the background. And we also recommend having short practice sessions. Ooh, just remembered this. One of my clients named Don just sent me a message yesterday that said he had one of the best meetings ever because he did a 30-minute practice session before his meeting, free flow speaking, modeling, and reading, right? And then he went to the meeting, he felt relaxed and confident and had one of his best meetings. So you have to do the work so it's top of mind, just like you said. And if you do the work, then when you give your brain a command to say, slow down or relax, or you can do this, your brain knows how to do that. If you don't do the work, your brain has no memory of it. It can't do it. It doesn't have the data to draw from, right? So you've got to do the work. And then when you tell yourself, do this, do that, you're able to do it. And that's literally what you just said. That's incredible. Absolutely. So Farrukh, I don't know if we got to this question here, but I think we're kind of getting ready to wind up a little bit, but I know we have at least a couple more questions. One question that we have is have you seen a return on your investment? I know we touched on that earlier, but I just kind of wanted to highlight that because ultimately what we're doing is we're saying, hey, invest in yourself. And then people are like, I'll just do it on my own, or no, I don't want to invest that much money. And literally, it's not a lot of money when you think about the return that you get. So our question to you is, have you seen a financial return as well as maybe even an emotional and personal return on your investment?
Yes. So certainly I've seen a financial return on my investments. Just, being able to grow at the current place that I work, getting promoted. I think I got a promotion around the time that I was working with Farrukh, if I remember correctly. And so, working on my speech for me, it's just, I would say, incredibly improves my leadership capacities, right? I was, being able to actually lead a team and, being able to just amplify my contributions as the company contributed to that as well. But aside from that, I would say just the peace, right? So the peace that I have gotten, the rest from the anxiety, because I mentioned earlier, really, whenever I had a speaking situation that I couldn't avoid, it would really affect my sleep, right? It would affect even my ability to eat. These are, as small as they sound, like they have a lot of impact on one's body. Like you start to even feel sick, you start to feel, ill, you're unhappy, you're depressed, and all of that has just been transformed because now it's something I no longer have to deal with. So even beyond like the financial, just being at peace all around, no longer dealing with anxiety. This is not to say that I don't get nervous, during speaking situations. I do get nervous. And even, during the virtual club, sometimes you have to present, you still feel nervous. I don't think you can ever really get to a point where you're no longer nervous. And even before this call, I did feel nervous, but I'm on this call and I'm able to speak well, right? So it just becomes, when you know that this is something you've done over and over again, you've done it well, you certainly can compare the way you feel at that time to, when you so it makes a huge difference.
So my net just stopped for a while, and I hope you guys are able to hear me right here.
Yeah.
All right, good. So I'm very sorry for that. Yeah, so one point I also wanted to mention while you were speaking about the last point about self-talk and how it was so much important to you. And for her, while I was working with her on a speech for her at the start, it was mostly breathing, extending her words whenever she started to do that, using her hands, breathing more, extending out her words, slowing down the speech. It started to trigger her modeling style. So whenever she started to do all of this, so she would start to get into that modeling zone. But for that to happen, it's not that you go out in a speaking situation, you ask yourself, hey, slow down, do this, do that. And it starts to happen because it is not a habit right now. It would not happen. Then you would have to remind yourself once again and once again. So the self-talk has to be there before the meeting or before the conversation, even while the meeting, conversation, presentation, whatever it is. Like she mentioned, probably 100 times, 200 times, over and over and over and over again. Your mind would just not want to do that because of habit. And you are like forcing it that you have to do it, you have to do it. And after a while, it just loses power and it says that, all right, I'm going to do what you're asking me to do. And then is the point where it starts to become easier and easier. So there's self-talk before and while speaking, and there's self-talk after speaking. So after speaking, you look back at your speaking situation, you remind yourself of the success. Sometimes people are so used to focusing on the failures that they are overlooking the successes. So, for example, if you used to have a 5-minute conversation and now 1 minute you're speaking well, but the rest of the time you're not speaking so well, people still tend to focus more on when they are not speaking well. But when you start to look out for successes, you celebrate them, the more they grow. But if you just keep looking at failures, the failures can keep growing as well. So focus on your successes and learn from the bumps in the road. All right, I got stuck right there. Probably I could have slowed down. So what I'm doing in that 1 minute when I'm speaking well, let me translate it to the time where I'm not speaking well. And sooner that 1 minute would turn into 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and eventually the whole 5 minutes. But look out for small improvements, small successes. This is also a part of self-talk. You're constantly reminding yourself of it, and you're like forcing yourself to, hey, just focus on the successes. And when you go to find successes, you'll often find them. And then, yeah, you mentioned a point about anxiety as well, nervousness as well. That's very normal. Even when Michael goes to do a session somewhere, I'm sure he might also feel some of that. I also feel some of that when I have to go out and do a session or something. Me and Michael recently did a session at an organization. So I was there live, Michael was there in the background. And while I was going there, I had this in my mind. I'm going as a speech coach. Now, what if I get stuck? What if I have a hard time? The people would think he's a speech coach and he just got stuck. So that was a fear in my mind. So that is very normal. But feeling that way does not mean that you would get stuck. Having a high heart rate does not mean that you would get stuck. Once you start really slow, once you start to get yourself into the momentum, once you put your focus on using your new speaking style, these feelings, this anxiety, and everything starts to go down and down. Many people feel like if I'm feeling like I would get stuck, it means that I would get stuck. No, it does not mean that. You worrying about stuff does not mean that. And I think Michael also shared experience where I think he was speaking somewhere and you felt like your voice was shaking, but someone just came up to you to make you realize that you sounded very slow. So sometimes it feels that it's not happening when it is.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's true.
So, Michael, do you have something else as well? One last thing that I have for Chelsea right here. I think she answered all the questions pretty well. So, what would you say to someone out there who is struggling with his or her speech? Would you recommend them to invest on their speech, and any message you have for someone who is at a place where you were 2 years ago or just before?
Sure. But first of all, sorry, my video is off. The power is out here. They're trying to put on the hand, but if it's all right, I can go ahead without the video. Okay. All right. So for me, I would say that I think it goes without saying that our speech make up a huge part of our lives, right? As long as you can speak, you would be speaking for the most part of your day, right? You would have to interact with people, your loved ones, and all of that. And having to deal with struggles with your speech can be a blessing. I know it can be very difficult, but you can also choose to see it as a blessing. And the good thing is that there is this program that exists. There is a way out. So there is actually a solution that exists and that works, right? And so if you're able to, I would strongly recommend that you make the investment to work on your speech and to transform your speech, because it makes a huge difference. The quality of your life just gets incredibly better. You're able to interact with your loved ones. So, like just better, like you're able to feel happier, freer, more confident, and just not limit yourself in life. So the ROI, even beyond like the financial, is really profound, right? And if you're in a position where you can, I would strongly advise that you do. And even if you can't, let's say, like afford the coaching right now, you could get started with this self-study until you're able to afford that, right? So at whatever level, let me know if you can see my video. Okay. So at whatever level that you are, it's really worth it, right? So that's certainly something that I would leave with you as my final words to anyone struggling with their speech.
Yeah. So one of our clients that we just met with last week, Joe, he mentioned that he had a profound experience with his mom, and his other language is Creole. And so he had, from what he said, he's really never been able to have a fluent conversation with his mom. And as a result of doing this process, he said he was able to have, for the first time, a fluent conversation with his mom. Another client that we had named Jacob said he's never been able to have a fluent conversation, I believe it's with his dad and grandmom, right, in English. And he said now he's able to have long, in-depth conversations with his dad and his grandmother. How profound is that? You mentioned some very important words. Just mentioned peace, that you feel more peaceful now. Excuse me. That there's freedom. That's a huge, like for me, that's one of my number one values, right? Actually, is freedom. Just being free to do what you feel like you're called to do what you want to do, be able to impact other people's lives, right? And then you mentioned just happiness. You just feel happier. And this also affects your health. So you actually feel healthier because you don't have that constant stress every day worrying about every speaking situation. And Farrukh and I have seen this. I've seen it for more than a decade. He's seen it. He's experienced it, first of all. And then he's seen it from the other side for the last 2 years, just how you feel like you're imprisoned in your own mind. And now you're free. And you also mentioned the fact that this is a blessing. And it really is. If you struggle with your speech, this has the potential to be a blessing. Because as you go through this process, you not only improve your speech, but you improve literally every other area of your life. And you now you know, and you have a process to improve any area that you want to improve, not just speech, because this is not just about speech. And then as you do this, you actually become a better than average speaker. So I'm confident in saying, Chelsea, that now you probably speak better than a lot of the people around you, who you probably thought, oh, wow, I wished I could speak like them. I wished I could speak like them. And this is not to be critical, but as you're going through this process, you actually start to see, wow, actually, they're not such great speakers. They use a lot of filler words. They speak too fast. I can't understand what they're saying. This process doesn't just help you overcome stuttering. You become a superior communicator. And like you said, you're able to take on leadership positions. People actually start to notice you, and they will proactively come to you and say, like, they'll say things like, wow, that was a great presentation. That was a great meeting. You did a great job. I love, and this is unsolicited, right? And this is not like, you can tell us, I'm not making this up. Like people think, well, he's the founder, so of course he's saying all this crap. but you can testify literally to everything that I'm saying, right?
Yes, yes. And I think I also shared one, this was just last month, the session that I had where we had at my company senior leaders, and I was to lead a meeting, and without even asking, I got feedback. Wow, Chelsea, that was such an engaging session. We really enjoyed, the presentation. So I certainly have experienced the feedback from that, and it's really empowering because just looking back from where I'm coming from to where we, just seeing the progress and knowing that just how, some years back, I couldn't do this. I wasn't able to do this. And today, like, I'm able to do it. And I'm getting such feedback. It's really amazing.
Yeah. And this is not scripted. Literally, I said that and I didn't know about any specific experiences that Chelsea had. And she just had one recently, right?
Yes.
And she's probably had other ones. So I'm telling you guys, if you're watching this, this is the real deal. And Chelsea, 2 years, and she's getting better. So we wanted to mention as we wrap up that we're running a special, and you can work with Farrukh actually for the same price that Chelsea worked with Farrukh 2 years ago at $997. I've put the links in the chat box. If you registered and you're here, we'll send that link out within 24 hours. And so you can work with him for $997 for 8 sessions. You actually get 9 sessions because there's an orientation. A super deal. If you want to book an appointment, I've put that link in the chat box. And it's a testament to the system itself, that something that I personally went through. So I struggled for more than 30 years with my speech. And then, some, 10, 15 years later, created this system. Farrukh went through the system, and now he's able to be a speech coach and teach other people. So that means it's a system. It's not just Michael Williams. It's not just me with my own personal experience. It's a scientifically based system that you can follow, right? And it just works. So trust the process, trust the system. Great time to work with Farrukh. Obviously, some of you may want to work with me. We'll have links, but right now is a great time to work with Farrukh. We have the link there. This offer will expire soon. So click that link. You can book an appointment, or you can just go ahead and buy the coaching right now. Also, Chelsea is in our virtual speech masters club. So some of you may be interested in doing that. And Farrukh, if you can put a link for that, you can join 1 session for free. And after that, it's just $120 per 6 months, right? And actually, Chelsea, you won last week, right? You won first place.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And once she joined, because we've been doing this for almost a year. It'll be a year and a couple of months, I think. And we've seen her actually get better and better in those sessions. So if you can just say a few brief words about your experience in the speech masters, and then maybe Farrukh might have a couple of words, and then we'll wrap up from there.
Sure. Certainly, I would say that just having the opportunity to put your speaking skills to practice with like-minded individuals, just people who understand the journey you're on, who are likely actually on the same journey with you as well, and just you share the same experiences or similar experiences with them, it's really been very helpful. So for me, having the opportunity to just receive feedback about my speech, because even though, yes, it's been 2 years, yes, my speech has dramatically improved, I don't see myself as having arrived. I feel like it's a constant journey, and it's just one that I'm willing to get better and better and better at, and just keep working at it, right? There's no like destination in mind, right? There's no like, I don't think there's a place you would really hit and you say, oh, okay, there's nothing. But for me personally, I just feel like it's something I want to just keep working at and just keep getting better and better. And the more that I do it, the more that I practice, the more that I put myself out there, I just will continue to get better. And so that gives you, the Virtual Speech Masters Club gives a great opportunity, a great forum to be able to practice, to get feedback, and just put yourself under pressure, right? And, it desensitizes you to the real life high pressure situations. You feel like you're used to it. You've been there, before. So that's very helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Perfect. I'm not gonna add too much to that. I just want to highlight it's a place where you can come practice what you're learning under pressure, which desensitizes you to your real life speaking situations, meetings, presentations, interviews, whatever, right? And we've literally seen people do this. And it's a safe place because you're amongst people who have the same struggles, and you get real-time feedback. So you get feedback, and then literally within that session, you can see improvement because you can apply the feedback. And then from week to week, you can see your improvement. So yeah. So Farrukh, if you'd like to, if you guys would like to take some questions, I don't know if people have questions, but this is the time for you to ask. We maybe should have done this earlier. We were having such a great time listening to Chelsea. But if people have some questions for you or Chelsea, they can go ahead and ask those questions now and we'll get them answered.
Right? Sure. So if anybody has to ask something, you can surely go ahead and write in the chat box on Zoom, or if someone is watching this right there on YouTube, you can post your questions right there. So, but whatever you might have for Chelsea, Michael, or myself, if not, we'll wrap it up soon and we'll go ahead from there. So while you people do that, Michael has shared the links and everything in the Zoom chat as well and on YouTube as well. So if you want to join the virtual speech masters, you can do that. If you want to work with Michael, you can do that. If you want to work with me, you can do that. Michael has also shared some discount links for working with me. We are running a short sale for a while. So you can also do that or speak with me first or speak with Michael or whatever you want. So you have all the links and everything. If you want to reach us out, you can also reach us out via email if you have any extra questions or stuff. But if you have something to ask here right now, you can before we wrap up. All right. So, Michael, someone is asking for the 997 link. Could you share that? I think I
Yes.
joined the meeting, so I missed it.
I shared it earlier in the chat and I'll paste it again. Give me just a second. Okay, here's the link right here. And guys, just remember this special is not going to last forever. So if it's something that you want to do, listen to Chelsea, just go ahead and figure out a way to do it because it's definitely worth, you have to do the work, but it's worth it. Right. So there's the link. Any other questions? This is a great time to ask Chelsea any questions about, you know, the process, anything that you want to ask her. Now is a great time to do it. All right. So Farrukh, anything that you want to share before we wrap it up? Anything that you or Chelsea would like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think we dive deep into each of the aspects, and I'm very glad that she was here. Now we'll try that after every 2 weeks or every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, we'll have someone, one of our coaching clients, so that the people can ask them questions as well. So I've also seen many people who wanted to work with me, like especially there were one or two who asked me at first that we want to have a call with someone who worked with you. That all right, we can see the testimonials and everything. And Chelsea, I think what it was with you, like someone sent you a text asking you about
Yes.
how the experience was, right?
Yes. I actually spoke with someone who was interested And he wanted to hear from me to know how my experience was. And yes.
And I also worked with him then on his speech, so you were able to convince him. Sanjay
Oh,
was.
that's great. Yeah. Okay. That's good to hear. Well, for
So,
me, I would say as just, final words, it was in a setting like this, right? This exact kind of meeting. Well, I mean, I think without the client part, but it was during a webinar that I made the decision to work with Farrukh. And it was, as Farrukh mentioned earlier, during that session, I asked the question about how to get started. And I think I, found a way to make the payment and just did that just a few days afterwards. And we started working together. And when it comes to my speech, that certainly has to be like the best decision that I made, because really the difference and the impact is a whole lot. So it really can't compare where I'm coming from to where I am now with my speech. So I really hope that everyone on the call and everyone listening really takes this chance, because it's worth it.
thank you for your words, Chelsea. And we are very proud of you for all the work that you have done. This was an excellent opportunity for you to put into practice, and you obviously took advantage of it. So you did an excellent job. So we are really happy that you were here. And from now on, it's just constantly moving upwards. And obviously, working on your speech is something that you can do all your life. But now you would not be working on your speech for the fluency part, but rather for the excellence part. Michael can keep working on his speech. I can keep working. Best of the speakers out there. There's no point where you would say that now I'm the best speaker in the world and I don't have to do, or I don't have to add anything at all. You just keep enhancing, you just keep improving, and you keep moving towards excellence. So I think that is the point for you right now. We love to have you here, and we would love for you to be in more of our webinars and sessions moving forward, and we'll go on from there. So I don't think, Michael, we have something from the people right here. So if you have something to add, and then we can probably go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, nope. I don't really have anything to add. If you registered, which if you're watching this now, then you did. And if you're watching a replay, you'll receive an email within about 24 hours with just an unedited replay, along with the special links to work with Farrukh. And we encourage you to do so. It's a great investment, not just financially, but just for the freedom and the peace and the happiness and the health and the healthiness. So we strongly encourage you to do that. We're not just trying to sell coaching, like literally you heard from someone, that this is something that's going to enhance your life. So thank you so much for watching this and for being here. If you're watching this later, like months later, still get in touch with us. You never know when we're having a sale, or even just our regular prices are a great investment. Doesn't matter if you spend $2,000 or $2,500, $3,000, you get that back. So it's still a great investment. Don't just wait for sales, because we don't always have sales. It's always a great investment. Okay. All right, man. Thank you, Chelsea, so much for being here. Very inspiring. Really enjoyed this. Thank you, Farrukh. And we'll see those of you. I also put a link in here for our virtual Speech Masters Club. I'm going to paste that again. So you might just want to come join us on Saturday. Let me just paste that link again to visit us. We're there essentially every Saturday. So there's that link. Okay. All right. So we'll see you all later.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you for having me once again, Farrukh and Michael. Bye.
Thank you for being